All right, good evening.
Good evening.
Let's see, by way of announcements, just a reminder that we're getting ready for the rummage sale this Saturday. And thank y'all for moving the chairs and helping out there. That'll help get things arranged for that event. And just a reminder that we will not have food Wednesday night. But just be available in case we need some help out in the fellowship hall after classes Wednesday. So might need your muscles again. Put you to work. Build them up some. Let's see. And what time did you say they needed to be here Saturday?
They get here about 7 to do the sausage biscuits.
All right. So I plan to be here around 7-ish at 7, drop the ish, be here around 7 to prepare the sausage biscuits for sale. Anything else we need to announce on that? All right. Reminder that delegate elections will be next Sunday morning at the end of the service. And WMS will be meeting next Sunday night, right? The 11th?
Yeah.
Okay. All right. Do we have any prayer requests tonight? Okay, any others?
Probably not a prayer request. I should have asked you out there, have you heard anything from Mike in the last little while?
Not in the last few days, no.
I should have asked you out there and I didn't think about it.
Okay, let's go to the Lord in prayer then. Ms. Rubino, would you lead us in prayer, please?
Our Father, we're so thankful to be in your house tonight, Lord, and we're so thankful for each one that's come out. Lord, we just pray that we'll all receive a blessing for being here. And Lord, we pray for those that we need to pray for tonight, Lord, those who were mentioned in prayer, and those who are sick, and those that's lost loved ones. Lord, we just pray that you would just comfort them as only you can. And Lord, we just pray for our church. We just pray that you would bless it and make it a lighthouse on this hill. Lord, these things we ask in your holy name. Amen.
Amen. I think we need a couple of testimonies. Oh, I forgot. I'm sorry. Cards. There are 3 cards on the back, on the table back there. If you will, after the service tonight, go by and sign those, please. Now we'll do testimonies.
I'm so thankful for the many good Christians that God put in my life and in my kids' lives, that anytime we need prayer, everybody's so faithful to come through. We all know prayer changes things.
Amen.
I think God continually for his blessings on me, what he has done, what he's doing now, and what he's going to do.
Amen.
Amen. Now ready to get her done, huh? All right, well, let's get her done then. When's the last time you read the discipline? Hmm?
Probably the last time we went over.
Last time we went over it? Uh-oh. Well, we are required to cover parts of the discipline each year. Haven't done that yet this year. So, with that thought in mind, we're going to begin a section tonight. I'm going to open it up. This is dangerous, I know, but what section would you like to cover? Now, I have a section picked out already, but what section would you like to cover? There's the historical sketch, the article, the Constitution, the Articles of Religion, the discipline, which goes into detail in each section, and those chapters are the local church, the annual conference, and the general conference, and then there's the judicial section. The epilogue. How about the Cliff Notes version? Anybody have a suggestion other than the epilogue?
Let's say the one you've already picked out.
The one I've already picked out.
That's what we're gonna hear anyway.
Because that's one I was going to do anyway. Exactly.
Well, that seems like a good one.
I want to go over the local church. And we'll start there tonight. And not going to cover all of it tonight. We're going to start tonight. When we talk about the local church, what are we talking about? According to the discipline, what is the local church?
Each individual church.
A society of believers in Jesus Christ and is of divine institution. That's directly from the discipline. The local church is made up of enough people to come together to fill the positions of the church who are of like mind and meet together on a regular basis to carry on the work of the denomination or the work of the church. That's not in the discipline, by the way. That's just my paraphrase of it. So when we talk about the local church, let me step back for just a second and do a little bit of looking at the hierarchy, because it helps to understand the role of each part in the organization, in the denomination. The local church is just that. It's the local body that is made up of a group of people who come together and they meet on a regular basis. And they are the ones that the local church really is the foundation of the denomination. Without the local church, we wouldn't have a denomination, right? And so those local churches come together and they meet on a regular basis. And then each year we have the annual conference. And the annual conference is laid out geographically, and it's determined by the general conference. I'll get to that one in a second. And the annual conference, as we said, meets each once a year. And it, who are the members of the annual conference?
Ministers and delegates.
Ministers and delegates. Next Sunday, we are having elections for the delegate who will represent Forest Grove at annual conference. And so that is laid out in the discipline, It's determined, and also in the bylaws of Mississippi Conference. And it shows, it tells us how we're to do all of this. The delegate of the local church, what is the role of that delegate? What's the significance of that position, or of that, what's the role?
To speak on behalf of Forest Grove.
Okay, to speak on behalf of Forest Grove. They represent Forest Grove at the annual conference. Anything else?
Committees.
They attend committees.
Okay, they're assigned to committees. They help in carrying out the different work of the denomination on the conference, on the annual conference level. I know sometimes when these committees meet, it's almost, we almost feel like it is make work, but it's not. There are important things. There are things that the committees do that's very important for the ongoing work of the conference. Anything else?
They attend general session and they vote on the officers.
They will elect the officers for the annual conference. Those officers are elected each year, and won't get too much into detail with that, but the main officers that are elected are president, secretary, and treasurer for the annual conference, and those three are elected by ballot, by secret ballot. And that is required by the discipline, by the way.
Now,
Aye. That's the fun part of conference, right? Anything else? There's one more duty, especially, that the delegate has.
Choose the pastor. I mean, that's part of representing the church.
Make known the wishes of
Make known the wishes of the church to the stationing committee for the assignment of the pastor for the coming year. Right. And so it is important, obviously the delegate for the local church is an important person, because remember, they are your voice at annual conference. And so it's important that you consider that as you elect your delegate, but also after your delegate is elected, that you let your delegate know what your wishes are. Because if you don't tell them, then they're going to do what they want to do, right? Now, in most cases, and I haven't seen too many cases where this didn't work out the way that, anyway, that there were issues, but for the most part, that usually works out the way it's supposed to. But that's the significance of that role. So, then from the annual conference, the next level is the general conference. And the general conference is the general church that oversees all of the annual conferences. We currently have 3 annual conferences. Y'all know what they are?
Belize, Alabama, and Mississippi.
Belize, Alabama, and Mississippi. And Mississippi is made up of Mississippi, Louisiana, and Arkansas. And we also have some preachers in Oklahoma. So we grew last year. Well, yes, no.
Yes, no.
On the general conference level, the general conference meets every quadrennium, every 4 years, and this year is the year that general conference will meet. General conference meets the 3rd Wednesday of May, and the delegates for general conference are elected at the annual conference. They were elected at annual conference last year, and so those delegates are the ones who will sit at the general conference. And at the general conference level, they also elect the president, a secretary, assistant secretary, a treasurer, and then all of the committees that are elected as well. So, back to the local church. That's what we're going to talk about. What is the requirement to be a member of the local church? How does a person become a member of the local church?
You approach the board and ask about being accepted into the church, and then make a public statement in front of the church.
Actually, you approach the pastor. The pastor or the associate pastor, or in their absence, any other minister, preacher, or leader officiating, such as the church leader. And then we would go to the board and say, hey, well, first of all, we would meet with that person, and we'll talk to them. What's your testimony? Tell me about your relationship with God, and just get a good understanding of where that person stands. That's if they're joining the church by based on their testimony. Now, we can also accept members by letter. That is, that let's say that they're a member of a church. Let's say that they're a member of the church at Springfield, Alabama, and they move from Alabama to Lawrence County. They come here and they say, hey, I want to move my letter to Forest Grove. So Springfield Church would send their letter to the pastor, to me, and then that person would become a member by letter, because they're already a member of a Methodist Protestant church. And it's not just Methodist Protestants. We'll accept letters from other denominations as well. But but that's how a person would become a member. They make that their wishes known. Now, what about children of members? What is their role? This is something we don't really talk about very often, and we don't do as much as maybe we should, and certainly not as much as they used to. But have you ever heard of a probationary member? It's a term that's used in the discipline. And probationary members are children of members who, as they're growing up, they're probationary, meaning that it's our responsibility to prepare them so that when they get old enough that they will join the church and become members. They do not automatically become members. They have to join. They still have to make that application and become members. But they are under the care of the church until such time as, and preparing them, instructing them so that they can request full membership at the time when they're ready. And that's based on their spiritual experience as well as their age. So any number of believers united as a church, embracing the principles of religious truth held by the church, adopting the Constitution, and conforming to our discipline and means of grace, shall at the request made to the president of an annual conference or a pastor of a church be recognized as a Methodist Protestant church. So it's not only membership, the how to become a member of the church, but how can a church become a Methodist Protestant church? And that's what I just read. So if there's a group of people, and this is really important today, because there are quite a few churches that are, let's say they're not satisfied with the membership, with their denominational membership. And so we're letting folks know that the Methodist Protestant Church is an option to them. The Methodist Protestant Church is a conservative denomination, and we have what we believe to be one of the best forms of government that's available. And so so this group then, if there's a group that wants to become a Methodist Protestant, they can make an application to the pastor of a local Methodist Protestant church, who would then pass that on to the conference president, or they could go directly to the conference president, annual conference president, or to the general conference president. And they would meet with them, go over the discipline, give them disciplines to study, and when everything is worked out, that they're satisfied with their doctrinal beliefs, that they are in line with the Methodist Protestant Church, then arrangements can be made for them to become a Methodist Protestant church. And they would be assigned to the appropriate annual conference based on their geographic location. And as I mentioned earlier, a church is composed of members residing sufficiently near each other to come together, to meet for public worship, and enough people to fill the offices and to carry on the business of the church. Any questions on membership? I got ahead of myself. Transfer and termination of membership is next. I already talked about transfer, moving your letter. How does a person lose membership to the church? Move to another church, move to another location. A person can only be removed from membership based on, now chapter 5 is judicial principles. I mentioned that earlier. If a person commits any of the offenses and meets the requirements in that section, then they would be removed from the church roll. Dual membership. And what that means is that you can't be a member of two churches at the same time. So if a person goes and joins, let's say they go and join a Baptist church, their membership in the Methodist Protestant Church is automatically terminated at that time. We do not recognize dual membership. There are some churches and some organizations that do, but we do not. And this is true of either the local member, and especially it is true of a minister. If a minister joins another denomination, then their credentials, their right to vote, their association with the Methodist Protestant Church is terminated immediately.
I got a question about that.
Mm-hmm.
Okay, which I know I'm seeing how Methodist Protestants does theirs. So every church, like when somebody joins the course of study, I mean it's different, right? So if they say a Baptist comes over to a Methodist church, do they have to redo the course of study?
Depends.
I'm just asking this just for information.
It depends on what level of education they have, because there are some groups that do not have a designated course of study.
Right.
They will actually ordain people without having gone through any formal education or formal preparation.
Sounds dangerous.
It is. It can be. Let me rephrase that. And so, if a person is coming, to the Methodist Protestant Church, when they make application, if they're making application to the local church, just like we have the examining committee that we examined you when you made application, we would do the same thing with that individual. And if they come in saying, well, I'm already ordained, then I'm going to want to see not just your credentials, but I want you to go through, tell me about what you did as far as your studies in preparation for that. And then we would make make that recommendation to the annual conference, and then it's up to the Ministerial Education and Relations Committee to determine if their credentials are satisfactory or if they need additional studies. And regardless, they would still have to go through a 3-year probation, no matter what. There's a minimum 3-year probation. And we'll get more into that if we go on into that section. That's in the annual conference section. But their educational standing, how much studies they've done, if they're coming from another denomination, at a minimum, we would require that they study the discipline, and may also require that they do some of the theological studies to ensure that they are doctrinally in line with what we believe. But those are done on a case-by-case basis. There's no set standard on that. If they've gone through college, then it depends on the college, if it's a recognized college by the Board of Christian Education or not. But all of those things are evaluated and determined and used to determine what, if anything else, they would have to do prior to being to their credentials being recognized by the Methodist Protestant Church. Anything else on that? All right, so Article 2 gets into local church officers. So let's take a look. And I'm not going to get into great detail on this, but I do want to cover, we'll cover at least one or two tonight. Let's see, it's 6:40. The first one has the most bullet points. I'm not sure why he has all of those requirements, but section 1 is pastor. The pastor is the minister who is appointed by the annual conference to a church, shall be styled as the pastor, and is, here's a fancy word, amenable to the annual conference. What does that mean? Answerable. Answerable is a better, perhaps more, a word that we would understand better, for his or her official conduct. What that means is that if the pastor's conduct is questionable, then the annual conference is the one who deals with that, because technically the pastor or the minister is a member of the annual conference and responsible to the annual conference and answerable to the annual conference for their conduct. Not going to get into the judicial side of things, but if there were situations where questions arose, then the local church has a means through the judicial section to deal with that by going to the annual conference president and taking care of those issues. And hopefully that never happens. We don't have that problem, but it is there in case we do. The minister or preacher appointed by the annual conference to assist the pastor in the discharge of his or her pastoral duties is styled what? Or named what? The assistant pastor. And they too are answerable to the annual conference for the faithful discharge of duty. It's the duty of every pastor to preach the word, to administer the ordinances, to execute the discipline. Now, that doesn't mean shoot it and kill it. It means to carry it out, to make sure that it is followed in the local church, and to faithfully discharge all the duties belonging to the ministerial and pastoral office. It's also important to explain, and that's what we're doing. That's why we do this, is to go over the different sections of the discipline, to explain it, and to make sure that you understand what the discipline says. Why does that matter? Why is that important?
Make sure they have a good understanding of it.
Make sure you have a good understanding of it. What else?
To learn, to,
Explains reason why we do things the way that we do, so that everybody knows.
Okay, so it's to know why we do what we do, to understand how it works, and to understand the reasoning why we do what we do. It's not just because I say, hey, that's a great idea, let's do it. There's reasons for it. Any others?
Well, it allows the people, it allows the church to function in a way because, everybody's got a part in it, whether they realize it or not. So, when it comes time to elect a delegate, they have to know the members are, they should vote.
Right.
Things like that.
Members should vote. It's your responsibility. I'm going to add one other thing to it. It's for your protection. What if I get up one Sunday and I decide, you know what? Let's just change things. I want to do things differently. And so we just come up with some crazy idea. Let's do something different. Let's do it a different way. Now, if you don't know what the discipline says and how the discipline says to do it, what's to keep me from doing that? Nothing. So it is important for you to know what the discipline says and how the church is to function and operate and what the duties and responsibilities of each officer is, so that you can make sure that your church is doing what is right, and to make sure that somebody doesn't come in and take you in a different path, on a different course. That, by the way, almost happened, 70 years ago now? 65 years ago? Here. Right? Now, you wouldn't remember. I wouldn't remember either. I wasn't here, but I know the story. But it is important that you, as the membership, know the discipline and know how it works, because
How many years did you say for?
let's see, it would have been probably 65, 75 years ago. 65. Seems like it was around 58, something like that, if I remember correctly.
And it would have been in the 50s.
It was 57, 58, right in that time frame. But
It was a little longer than that, a couple of years. Jimmy was a baby,
okay,
and he would have been 67. He was 67 this last October.
okay. So it was let's just say 67 years ago then. It's somewhere in that general area. But that's when the pastor that was assigned to the church at that time tried to take Forest Grove to another denomination, and did not do it legally. And so the members of Forest Grove at that time knew the discipline and stood up to him and said, no, you're not going to do it. And so for that reason, Forest Grove is still a Methodist Protestant church today.
I remember what Fred said. No, brother so-and-so, you can't do that.
Right. Yeah, we won't name the name, but
Well, that's what I said.
yeah. But it is, and that's why it's so important that the members of the local church know the discipline and know what it says. It's not just for the pastor to know. It's for you to know, and it's for your protection. And that's one of the reasons that we do this. Let's see. As we talked about earlier, to receive persons on probation, to bring them in to help teach them, help them learn what they need to know in order to be a member of the local church. Now, I'm also supposed to visit all the classes at least once a quarter. Now, this is not Sunday school classes. When this was set up, the church, the local churches there were usually 2 or 3 churches in a circuit. And a circuit would have consisted, for example, 100 years ago, which Monticello didn't exist then, but Forest Grove and Divide, I know were 2 churches in the circuit. And I think there was 1 or 2 others. I think there were 1 or 2 others back then. Anyway, so Forest Grove and Divide were 2 churches in the circuit that had 1 pastor. And the churches could and would divide up into classes for meetings so that they could, when the pastor was not available. And that, by the way, is why we have what we call a church leader. That's the next position that we'll talk about. So I'll just wait and we'll talk about that then. Anyway, but the classes, it is the responsibility of the pastor, if possible, if practical, to visit each of the classes once a quarter to make sure that they meet, that their leaders are doing their jobs, and that the members are regularly attending their classes. And so sometimes these churches would divide up into today I think the term is small groups, into classes, and those leaders would meet with those classes and they would meet that way. It's the responsibility of the pastor to give due notice from the pulpit in the church at the time and place of the next official board meeting. And we do that. In fact, our board meetings are set. We have a set standard date, which is what? First Sunday of the month, when practical. Sometimes we have to change that due to extenuating circumstances. But that's what it's set for, and so we try to at least a month before, if it's going to have to be changed, go ahead and make that change so that we can announce from the pulpit. Now, how many Sundays is something supposed to be announced from the pulpit? 2 Sundays. Why is that? Okay, somebody misses one of the Sundays, right? Now, I'm going to date this thing here now. But paragraph 7 says to hold love feasts. What's a love feast?
Gather, fellowship, food in my stomach, eating food with believers.
We do it once a quarter now.
Eating lovely food.
It's called communion. The love feast was another term that they used for communion. General class meetings and prayer meetings. Visit the sick, the poor, the aged, the infirm, as well as those in health and better circumstances. Recognize the children of our church as under pastoral care and instruction with a view to their admission into full membership. Organize children of members in classes of moderate size. This is what we call what? And keep a record of all members that belong to the church. Report to the annual conference. Give a certificate to those who desire to remove to another church. That's the letter, writing the letter so that they can go to another church if they're moving. Pastor is a member of all Sunday school societies and teachers' meetings belonging to their charge, and when present, may be the chairman of the meeting if they so desire. Teachers' meetings shall be held weekly or at least monthly.
We goofed there, didn't we?
Boy, don't we? It shall be the duty of the pastor to present the people of his or her charge annually the claims of the respective general interest of the church, as required by the discipline, to observe and emphasize the special days. So basically what this is saying is that when there's anything that comes down from the annual conference or the general conference, that I'll let you know, I'll put that word out, and that we make sure that we follow those things. And it's the duty of the associate pastor to preach in the appointments and to aid the pastor in the general work of the gospel and the charge in which they have been appointed. Those are the requirements that are given in the discipline. Now that's just that doesn't mean that there aren't other things. And in fact, some years ago, we got together and we went over the duties of each of these people, each of these positions, I should say, and we put together a list or a job description for each one, and I'll have to pull that out, and we'll kind of take a look at those. Let's see, this is probably a good point to stop, because next is church leader. I think I want to wait on that one. Any questions on what we went over tonight? Helpful? Yes, no?
I realize that I need to reread it.
I would encourage you to. You all should have a copy of the discipline. Go ahead and get it out. Reread it. It's chapter 1 of the discipline, the local church, and we will continue next time by looking at some of the other positions: church leaders, trustees, stewards. Let's see. I think appropriately, Sunday School Board, which by the way meets on the 28th of this month, the treasurers, secretary, and other officers. And then we'll also cover the election of officers. I don't know if we'll get through all these next week or not, but we'll cover what we can. Again, it's important. It's also important for you to know, especially, and that's why I want to kind of take time as we go through these various positions, because we have church officer elections coming up in April, and you'll be electing these officers. And so it helps for you to know, well, hey, that's what this person is supposed to be doing in this role. So think about that as we go through through these different positions, so that when it comes time for elections, that you can be prepared to put the right people in those positions. Okay? Any questions, any comments? All right. Then let's stand and we will be dismissed.